Hi guys and welcome back to a new video. In today's video, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to go through all the different things that have been added into the game in Dragonflight and also simply just review everything that has been working so far and everything that I think isn't working well and that probably should be changed in Dragonflight. So this is something that I wanted to do for quite some time, and I think now that we've reached almost the final season of Dragonflight and not a lot of things are going to change after that, I think that's a good moment to do it. So the main goal of this video is really again to review all these different things, see what have been the biggest wins and also the biggest L's in Dragonflight, and then try to answer the question, is WoW still good in 2024 and is it worth playing it? Keep in mind, I've been playing this game for a long time, almost since its launch in 2005-2006, and I've been playing all the different expansions since then, so normally I have a pretty good knowledge of what is good for the game, what is not good for the game, and especially over the years, what has been working and what currently is not working well. So hopefully this video will be able to also help you see a little bit what currently is good and not good, and who knows, maybe some of these things will change in the future. So let's dive into all these different things, and I will first start with all the positives because I think it's always better to first highlight everything that has been working well in Dragonflight, everything that has changed, and everything that has been added into the game that I personally think is really good. So let's start. And at number one, I will put the reintroduction of some of the old content that was removed from the game, and especially from Classic WoW. So here, for instance, we got Zul'Gurub, we got Naxxramas, we got Scholomance, we also get the Scarlet Monastery, and all these different things have been so far really good. I've personally had so much fun, for instance, especially with Naxxramas. I think this is probably the most fun I've had in a long time. And also, I think it's a really smart way for Blizzard to bring these things into the game, but without just bringing them and giving them to players, but actually having some interesting things happening around all these different things. So for instance, again, in my opinion, Naxxramas was the most interesting one, and by far, again, the most fun I've had so far in a long time in World of Warcraft. The fact that you had to discover all these different secrets, you had to interact with so many old dungeons and old things of the past, and then you had to first go into Scholomance, then you had to go into the old Scholomance, into Stratholme, and then you had to go into Naxxramas, and even there you had so many different things to do in order to finally unlock these different items and all these old things that you were able to get from the past. I think this is a really clever way to do it, and I personally am really happy because I know that in the future they're probably going to try to bring back more of these, and I think if they're keeping it, doing it like that, then it's definitely a win for everyone. Also here, for instance, I think the main concern a lot of people had was with the reintroduction of tier 3 sets in the game outside of a black market auction house. And I was part of the people who were a little bit skeptical about being able to craft these different tier sets. This is something that we kind of learned before the release of the patch where Naxxramas was available again. And I think the way they decided to do it is still good because it's still pretty challenging to craft a full set using the new way that you can have in Naxxramas. And overall, I'm not mad, even though I'm someone who has most of the tier 3 sets that paid through the black market auction house in order to get them. I'm really not mad because I think it's nice for people to have another avenue to do it. And it's still something that, again, is challenging enough for me that I'm not gonna criticize the way they decided to bring these tier 3 sets back into the game. So if I had to put it a grade out of 10, I would probably say it's a 9.5 out of 10, simply because, again, there's just a few things that I think could have done maybe better. But again, this is a really smart way to bring back old content. This is very interactive for the player. And like that, players are able to experience what others have been able to experience before that in classic WoW. And so I think this is a really cool thing to do. And I really, really hope that they will bring back more of this, because I think it just brings a little bit of magic of all these different things that were available before in the game and that players can now enjoy again. Then after that, we're gonna have Dragonriding. I think Dragonriding is probably one of the best and most impactful systems that has been added into the game in Dragonflight, and something that probably most of you will agree with me that is really good for the game. So whether it is because you enjoy going super fast from point A to point B, or also because you just like the feeling of being able to go and do all these cool things with your dragon riding mount, I think there are a lot of positives about getting dragon riding in the game. First of all, of course, you're saving a lot of time because you're able to move very fast from point A to point B, which I think is really good. Then, of course, it's really fun to be able to customize your different mounts and to be able to add different type of armors to unlock all these other skins and everything for your different mounts. And overall, I would say the feeling that you have when you're using dragon riding and going super fast and suddenly going up and down, I think is really cool and something that is very new and very unique for this game. Also, I think probably like one of the main criticism that people had was the fact that when you introduce a system like that, it's very difficult to then, when you go in the old world, to have to use your regular flying mount, which is then super, super slow. But again, since patch 10.2.5, we are able to use the dragon riding mounts in almost any zones of the game. And so this is not really something that I would use as a criticism anymore, because it has been fixed by Blizzard. Also, there are all the different events linked to dragon riding. So you have the different world quests. You also have all the different cups. For instance, right now there is the Outland Cup. And even though I know some people are saying this is a little bit childish for World of Warcraft and for Blizzard, and it looks like Spyro the Dragon, I still think it's fun to have different type of things you can do in the game. And again, if some people don't really like this type of content, it's completely fine. You don't really have to do it. You don't have to interact with it. For instance, if I'm being completely honest, I haven't done any single dragon riding race in the entire game since the launch of Dragonflight, simply because it's not really for me. I don't really have anything to gain from it. But again, I'm happy to see people, for instance, having a lot of fun with the different dragon riding cups and being able to really experience their dragon riding mount and use it at its fullest potential. But as we will see a little bit later in this video, not everything has been perfect with this new system, and there's definitely a lot of improvements that could be done. So for this reason, I will probably put an 8 out of 10 when it comes to dragon riding. And still, I think overall, this is a positive win for the game in Dragonflight. After that, at number 3, we're gonna have the trading post. So the trading post is probably gonna be a little bit more controversial, because I'm sure some of you are gonna say this is not really that positive. But overall, I would say, in my opinion, this is something that I think is adding a lot of good things for the game. First of all, the main thing is, of course, the fact that we're able to get some new really cool cosmetic items, some mounts, some pets, some toys, and also a lot of new unique appearances. So this is definitely something that I think is a positive. And also the fact that you don't really have to spend any real money in order to get these different items. You just need to complete all the different activities in the game, and like that you're then able to purchase all these new cool items. Of course, there has been a lot of criticism around the fact that there's just too many items and they're too expensive for the amount of tenders you can get per month. And so this is basically a strategy for Blizzard to then incentivize you to buy some tenders from the shop. But again, right now, the tenders are not available really from the shop. And also, I think it's just a matter of you need to prioritize what you really think is valuable and what you really want, and not just buy everything that is appearing on the trading post. For instance, right now, I still have 4,000 points because I'm only saving for the rare occasions when I'm like, okay, that's something that I really want. And so I think if you're able to just control and limit a little bit yourself, this is good, and you can still buy all the things that you really, really want, and not just things that you're going to learn and then let sit in your collection and that you're never really going to use after that. Also, one thing that I think is really good is the fact that with the trading post, we are now able to get all the different items that are available on the in-game shop and that were also previously available on the shop. We are able to get them on the trading post probably like 3 or 4 months after they're released on the shop for free through the tenders. So I think this is a really clever way for Blizzard to make sure that these type of items are also available for a currency that is not real money. Even though I still agree with everyone that honestly we don't need a shop. I mean, maybe for just a few things like, being able to transfer your character, these type of things. But having cosmetics on the shops for me is really not good. And especially having all these new cool mounts and everything, I think it doesn't make a lot of sense because they could simply add them in the game through other ways. But still, it's nice that at least now we are able to get these items without having to pay real money. You just need to wait a little bit and then you can purchase them with your tenders from the trading post. And also, it's retroactive, so it means that all the different items that were previously available on the shop will most likely at some point appear on the trading post as well. So overall, I would say this is a win, but I can definitely see why also some people are not really happy with the trading post. I think the main complaint a lot of people are having is the fact that simply with the trading post, they're adding a lot of items that could be added in the game by doing different type of activities just by releasing them on the trading post. And I think that doesn't really make a lot of sense. I think sometimes it's good to have things available from the trading post, but then some of the things should only be available by doing in-game content. As you will see a little bit later in this video, for instance, is something that applies with the different holiday events. But again, this is something that sadly is the case. And still, I think there is more positive than negative when it comes to the trading post. So for the trading post, I think it's going to be a solid 8.5 out of 10. Again, there are some improvements that can be done. But overall, this is a really nice system. And this is something that is not, let's just say, necessary for players. Again, these are only cosmetics, recorders, and mounts and pets that you can get. So nothing that is really important for your gameplay. So overall, a nice addition to the game. And I still think a lot of items that are being introduced into the game through the trading post are really, really cool. After that, I want to talk about the frequency of content release in Dragonflight. I think this is definitely the biggest win compared especially to Shadowlands, and definitely something that I'm happy with. So I think we're really getting a lot of content and it's pretty quick. There's not a lot of gaps in between. So as you can see, for instance, with the current patch, we first had 10.2, then we're at 10.2.5, then we're going to get 10.2.6, then we're going to get 10.2.7. So it just goes to show there's so much happening. There's so much that is being added into the game. Sometimes it's less interesting than others, but still it's new things you can do, new quest lines, new experiences, and new zones that you can explore. And so overall, I would say it's very positive, and I really do hope that they're going to keep it like that for the next expansions, and I'm pretty sure this is what they're planning to do, as again, they're doing very short expansions, and they've already planned the 3 next ones. So for me, this is very, very, very good, because I think, for instance, when you're talking about the worst expansions ever, a lot of people will bring Warcraft of Draenor and of course Shadowlands, and the main criticism was the lack of content. So this is something that hopefully with Dragonflight is not an issue, and really again something that I think is being done very well and very cleverly. Of course, right now we're probably going to get a little bit of a content break, let's just say, because we're going to get the last season and we're not going to get any new raids. We're just going to get the new fated raids, which are all the different raids from Dragonflight that will just be available in the fated difficulty. And then probably there's not going to have anything new. Even the tier sets we're going to get are going to be basically the same as the previous ones from the previous seasons. But again, I think overall this is the only time where we're going to get a little bit of this content drought, when all the rest of the expansion we've been able to really enjoy the game without having to fear not having anything to do, and especially not being able to experience anything new. So for this, I will put a 9.5 out of 10, and I really, really hope that they will keep bringing as much content as fast as possible in the next expansions. Because again, I think it's the best thing to do to keep players interested and hyped for the game. So after that, we will have the revamp of the talent trees. So I think this is something that a lot of people have been pretty happy so far in Dragonflight. The fact that you are able to now choose between these two talent trees, one that is normal for your class and then one that is specific to your specialization, I think makes a lot of sense. And overall, I haven't seen too much criticism on this. So this is definitely something that I consider as a win in Dragonflight. And hopefully they will keep thinking of new ways to make these different talent trees as entertaining and interesting as possible. And of course, also user friendly. And I think here the fact that you are able to just change wherever you want, whenever you want, and you can also change very easily the specialization, I think is good. And overall, I don't have much criticism to say about these new talent trees. And I know that in the War Within, we will be getting some new heroes talents. And so this is something that probably will be a nice addition again to these different talent trees and all the different things you're able to do with your class and with your specialization. And hopefully it will still be a good addition and still be user friendly like it is right now in Dragonflight. So overall, I would probably put a 10 out of 10 for the new talent trees in Dragonflight. Of course, I'm sure there are plenty of things that could be improved, and so let me know in the comments if you disagree with me for this 10 out of 10. And again, this is something that I think Blizzard is going to try to improve with the War Within and the next few expansions, and so hopefully it will stay as good as it is right now. After that, we have something that I'm sure many of you will disagree with me, but again, in my opinion, it's something that has been pretty positive for the game so far. And this is the addition of cross-realm trading. So with cross-realm trading, basically you are able to directly trade items and gold to anyone else in your region. So it means that you are not bound to only trade and do things with people from your realm or the different realms that are attached to your main realm. So with cross-realm trading, for instance, there are still a lot of things you cannot do. So from the auction house, for instance, only the commodities will be cross-realm. And so it means that you will be able to, for instance, sell and buy materials from anyone in your region. But then all the rest will still be specific to your realm and the connected realms. Same, you cannot send mails to the different players in other regions. So this is still something that you can only do with people from your specific realm and the connected realms. So overall, I really think this is a positive thing for players, whether you're playing on a small pop realm and you want to try and have a chance of actually selling some of the different items you farmed, or you're playing on a high pop realm and you want to try and avoid the competition that is too intense on your realm and you want to try and sell some of your items on other realms, then this is again something that is good for all these different players. Also keep in mind, a main issue that a lot of people had before that was the feeling of being trapped on their realm, because if you're playing especially on a low pop realm, then sadly a lot of things won't be as easy or as fun, and gold making was definitely one of them. And gold making is a very important aspect of the game because again, sometimes you will need this gold in order to buy all the different items you need to be performant in the current season. For instance, I'm thinking of Shadowlands with all the different legendaries you need to buy. And so it's important for players to be able and make some gold if they want to invest some time in. And if they just don't want to maybe spend some real money and buy some tokens instead. So for me, this is a positive change, and probably the only community that is really impacted negatively by this change is probably the gold making community that I'm part of. Again, there's a lot of positive as well, but then it kind of ruined a lot of markets because for a lot of gold makers, it was good to be able to sell different type of items on different type of markets. But now that people have access to every realm, you will see that a lot of items just dropped in value simply because people are selling them everywhere and they're able to farm them super fast and then sell them again on any realms. So there's still some positive, there's still some negative, but overall, for me, this is a win in Dragonflight and something that probably they will continue to expand in the future. And I think the next step is probably simply having the auction house completely region-wide. This is something that will take a little bit of time, Not only because I think Blizzard is trying to see if this is positive or not for the players, but also because it's very difficult technically to actually do this type of changes. We've seen with the region-wide auction house for commodities that it bugged a lot. The auction house was closed for a big period of time, and so this is something that maybe will happen in the future, but so far we'll have to see and wait. So for cross-realm trading, I will probably put a 6.5 out of 10 because again, I think there's a lot of things that can be improved. Also, right now, I think the fact that you basically need a second account in order to really interact with it and be able to trade items from one realm to another easily is a big barrier for a lot of players. And so I think if we were able to maybe just mail items directly, that would be a little bit easier. But again, this is a good change and something that can only be improved in the future. And so this is why I'm going to leave it in the list of wins for Dragonflight. Now let's talk about tier sets. So I think having tier sets that are specific to your class is a really big positive thing for the game. This is something that happened in the last patch of Shadowlands, and it's nice to see that Blizzard is maintaining this change. I think in Dragonflight we got some pretty solid sets, and I know that some of the best sets I've ever seen in the game are from Dragonflight. I think there's still a lot of things that could be improved. For instance, the fact that you have really these a little bit annoying color schemes for every class, and this is something that is always the case. For instance, you know that you will get the reds for elite sets, and then the purple for mythic, and then all the ones and basically all the different classes have the same color schemes. I think this is a little bit boring. I think they should try and go back to think more of what makes each class very unique and how they can translate that with tier sets. For instance, I think still in Classic WoW, the tier 3 sets have been one of the best example of bringing this uniqueness for each class. And this is what, in my opinion, Blizzard should try to aim for in the future. Even though I know it requires a little bit more work, it's still something that is good. Also, I think the fact that all the different sets are basically the same, whether you're doing it LFR, in Mythic, or in Elite PvP, and just the color is changing, is also maybe a little bit boring. I think, for instance, when you compare to War of the Genre, especially the first season, where we were able to get completely unique sets for the Mythic set and for the Elite set each time, I think that was completely insane. And like that, we were able to get so many different sets during a same season of World of Warcraft. So there are still a lot of things that could be improved, but overall, I'm happy to see that we're getting some nice sets. And I really look forward to see in the War Within if maybe they can try to really insist more again on what makes each class unique. So for tier sets, it's going to be another 6.5. Again, I think there's tons of improvement that can be done. But overall, this is a positive change and something that I think is good for the game. Finally, another minor change that I want to highlight and that I think is very positive is the addition of white and gray quality items to the Transmog system. I think again, this is not something that is very impactful for players, but it's just a nice addition and something that again can add a lot of positive for players, whether it is because you want to use this type of items or you want to farm some of them and then make some gold with them. There's so many positive things you can do with these items, and overall, this is a positive thing for players in the game. For instance, you can really get some cool items that are high quality. So for instance, right now with the Gilneas questline, you can get this one right here. And these are the type of examples of items that are really, really nice, and they are white and gray quality items, but there's still things that a lot of players want to use with their tier sets or with their transmog. And overall, I'm very happy with this change. So this is something, again, that is minor. This is not something that's going to really impact your gameplay in any way, shape, or form, but simple, nice little touch that is player friendly, and again, that I think is making a lot of people happy. So for this reason, I will put this with a 10 out of 10, simply because there's not much more that they can do. And this is something that I'm happy to know will remain in the next expansions. And so definitely something good for the game. Okay, now that we've been talking about all these positive things that happened in Dragonflight, I think it's also important to go through everything that is not working well and everything that needs to be improved in Dragonflight and in the future expansions. So keep in mind, again, you are completely allowed to disagree with me on all these different things, and please let me know in the comments if you think there are other things I should add to both of these lists, and especially if you disagree, what are the main reasons why you're disagreeing with my takes on all these different things. Okay, so let's start with the first item on our list, and I really think I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this item, but that's completely fine. So I personally think that the new profession system and especially the new crafting orders are complete garbage and are something that should either be completely removed or that should really be improved in a way where it's completely different than how it is right now. So I know that there are a few positive things with these new systems, but overall I think it's really bad. First of all, I know that Blizzard wanted to bring more uniqueness to professions and also give the players a feeling of basically being able to choose what you want to do, where you want to invest your knowledge points, and how you want to become the best crafter in the entire kingdom. But the reality is that this is fake. This is not something that is actually real because you know exactly what you need to do and how you need to use your knowledge points in order to be the most competitive on the market. And sadly, if you even just misused some of your knowledge points, then you were not competitive anymore, and then you had no chance whatsoever to actually make a lot of gold or be useful with your professions. Also, there is a lot of time-gated content that are linked to new professions in Dragonflight. And so again, this is something that I think is just making this system too complicated and absolutely not player-friendly. And then of course you have the crafting order, so this is probably the worst part of this new system in my opinion. The fact that you have to go through this system in order to craft items and to hunt for players who are willing to give you a little bit of gold, I think is ridiculous. I think it was nice before when you were simply able to craft an item, sell it on the auction house, and like that you were able to just make more gold, and it was just easier for everyone. I think that was better. Of course, keep in mind here, I'm mainly talking from the perspective of someone who is making gold in World of Warcraft and who likes that. So I know I know that for some players who are not interested in that and just want, for instance, to get some nice item crafted, it was probably a little bit better because you were able to then get them for maybe just 1000 gold, and then you were able to get your items with the highest eye level compared to on the auction house where sometimes you would have had to like spend 200, 300,000 gold in order to get these different items. But still, I think overall, gold makers and gold making is a big aspect of this game. And I do think that with this new profession system, it's just not good, and especially it just feels like work. And I'm sure that many of you guys are working outside of World of Warcraft, and when you have to come back from work and start playing the game and you basically have to do exactly the same or even more painful, then this is just not fun. So again, I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with me. I know plenty of people have been able to make millions of golds with the crafting orders and with the new profession system. And I know that plenty of people who are not interested in these professions and who are not interested in making gold, but just interested in getting some nice items, were really happy with the way this new system is working. But again, this is my video, and personally, I highly dislike this new system, and this is something that I really hope Blizzard will try to improve in the future so it's not as bad as it is right now. For this reason, I will rate it a 5 out of 10 because again, there is some positive and of course there's a lot of negative as well. But overall, I know a lot of players are happy with this new system, and so this is why I will put 5 out of 10. But of course, there are plenty of things that Blizzard can do to improve this system. I always think it's better to try and improve something than just, as soon as it doesn't work, like put it in the garbage. So the first thing, of course, is for the crafting orders, allowing players to decide if they want to craft a BoE and sell it on the auction house, or if they want to just try and do it through the crafting order. I think this is a positive thing for both people who are trying to sell items and trying to buy items, because trust me, on low pop realms, when there is no one playing and you're here and you have to find someone who is willing to craft you the item through the crafting order and who has the highest optimized way to craft it, that's not easy. And so if you have the opportunity to just buy it from the auction house, then it's way better. Of course, also for the crafting orders, they can try to add more items from previous expansions that are bans when picked up when you craft them to the crafting order. I think it would add a bit more flavor to this, and that's always something they've started to do with, for instance, all the different items that have been reintroduced from Zul'Gurub, from Naxxramas and everything. And finally, I think they should really try to make sure that knowledge points are not such a barrier to a lot of people who are starting to use these different professions. I think they should add more catch-up mechanisms and also try to make sure that if, for instance, you're doing a mistake, you're trying something and it doesn't work, you can more easily just change that and use a better path that will make you as competitive as other players, even if, again, you made a mistake at the beginning. After that, this is something that I'm not an expert in, but I know there's been a lot of discussions around this topic, and this is rated PvP. So rated PvP right now apparently is really not doing well, and Dragonflight has been one of the worst expansions, for instance, to get Gladiator and get these different type of rewards. A lot of very big YouTubers, for instance, Ben Rookie, I've been talking about it, and I've really tried to highlight everything that is wrong with PvP in Dragonflight, especially the fact that it is so difficult and there are so many gaps between players who are reaching maybe 3k of rating and then everyone else who is then blocked at like 1,800 or something like that. And so I definitely think Blizzard needs to try and work this out, because PvP is a very important part of the game. And if you are not able to even try and get some of these rewards, then it's just going to create a lot of frustration for a lot of players. And most likely a lot of players who are mainly playing for PvP will end up quitting because, again, it's too difficult and it's not fun anymore. And I know a lot of people who are gladiators, multi-rank ones and everything, are more and more playing, for instance, Classic WoW and Season of Discovery and everything, simply because they're saying PvP in Dragonflight is not fun, and this is not something they want to do because they just don't find it entertaining anymore. So this is something I know that Blizzard has been trying to look into more and more, and they're trying, for instance, to have a little bit of inflation for the different ratings of a lot of players and trying to make sure that more players reach Gladiator and everything. But I still think there's a lot of improvements that needs to be done, and hopefully this is something that they will be able to figure out soon enough, so a lot of players are not feeling completely frustrated and decide to leave the game before that. Also, I think in general we need more content for PvP that are accessible to everyone. So for instance, back in Cataclysm we had Tolbarad, in Mist of Pandaria, in Waters of January we had Ashran. And right now, as you can see in, for instance, Season of Discovery, there are Ashen Veil and all these new things that are being added as world content for PvP. And I really do think we need more of these, because right now people only interact with PvP when they turn on War Mode on and sometimes they get into a little fight with someone, or when they do BGs. But there is so much more to PvP, and I really think Blizzard could do more when it comes again to PvP. There's one or two world quests that are fun enough in Dragonflight where you can battle with a lot of people. But again, there's just not a lot of incentives attached to it. And so a lot of players are just not interacting with this type of systems. So I think also in the future, this is something Blizzard really needs to consider and really needs to try and add more content for world PvP, and also just content for players who can do a little bit of PvP and then get really good rewards that are not only good for PvP. So overall, I would rate that a 4 out of 10, because again, apparently this is a really bad expansion for PvP. And so yeah, that's going to be my overall rating for PvP in Dragonflight. Now I want to talk about Dragonriding, and this is still something that I think is really, really good for the game. But there is just one aspect that I think needs to be improved a lot, and this is the lack of appearances and customization options for your Dragonriding mounts. So this is something that probably in the future won't be as much as an issue, because you will be able to use any of your flying mounts as a Dragonriding mount. But right now in Dragonflight, you are limited to only a few mounts, and honestly, there's just not much you can do in order to get some nice skins for all these different mounts. So in my opinion, Blizzard should really try and add more of these manuscripts and try to add more rewards that allow you to get some new cool skins and new customization options for all these different dragon riding mounts, and also just try to add more new unique dragon riding mounts into the game. Because even though you have a few ones that are cool, most of them are from PvP, rated PvP, or raiding at a very high level. And so it's not really easy to get these type of things. And then you're just stuck with the different base options that you can customize a little bit, but overall you can't really do much with it. So I think definitely Blizzard needs to think of more unique models they can add into the game, and also more unique customization options for all the existing ones. Like that, it will give more of a feeling of fullness when it comes to dragon riding, rather than, oh, okay, I have to use one of the 5-6 mounts that are mandatory, and then I cannot really do anything else, which sometimes can feel a little bit frustrating, I'm not gonna lie. But again, this is something that in the future, and I believe they're planning to introduce this new possibility to use any flying mounts as a dragon riding mount early in the War Within. So at that moment, it won't really be that much of an issue anymore, because again, you will be able to use all your different flying mounts. But right now, as you are not really able to use your normal flying mounts that you love, and you have to use some of these dragon riding mounts, I think they need, again, to make it more interesting for players and add more options. So for this reason, I will put this as a 5 out of 10, because again, this is not a major downside of the dragon riding system, but just something that they can definitely do to improve this system. Now let's talk about the revamp of the different holiday events. So this is something that Blizzard has been talking a lot about in Dragonflight, and so far I have to say this is very, very disappointing. The only one that honestly got a good revamp was the Arrow's End event, but all the other ones almost didn't get anything. Right now, for instance, there is the Love is in the Air event, and for me it's just crazy to see that all the new cool items that have been added linked to the Love is in the Air event are either accessible through the trading post or through the in-game shop. So this is something for me that doesn't make any sense. For instance, right now the mount that has just been added to the shop, as well as the full cosmetic sets, should be things you should be able to get by completing new achievements during this holiday event and by doing activities linked to this event, and not things you need to buy either from the trading post or from the shop. So this is the same with a lot of these other holiday events, and I think overall a lot of people thought there was going to have some positive things happening, but so far there hasn't really been anything. Again, the only one that got a slightly interesting revamp was the Arrow's End event, but even that, there wasn't much more that has been added. Also, I think it's time for Blizzard to add more rewards for all these different holiday events that again are linked to the event and not linked to the shop or the trading post. So for instance, you can add more mounts, you can add more cosmetic items and all these different things that again you get with the currency, or that you get by doing achievements or activities linked to the event. So overall for me this has been very, very disappointing, especially right now. For instance, the Lunar Festival, there's literally only one item that has been added, and this is a manuscript you can buy for 50,000 gold, and it's not even really linked to the event because you don't even need to farm the different currency from the event. So overall, I think there's a lot of work they can do with these holiday events, and I really hope in the future they will consider trying to actually revamp all these different things. So for this reason, I will put a 2 out of 5 So for this reason, I will rate the revamp of holiday events as a 2 out of 10, and definitely something I've been very, very disappointed with in Dragonflight. Another thing that is not major, but this is something that I think is missing in Dragonflight, is the fact that we don't have any world BoEs. And this is probably one of the first expansion ever where we don't have world BoEs that you can then sell on the auction house. I know this change has probably been made simply because there is a crafting order system, and Blizzard wanted to make sure people are interacting with this system in order to get their new cool items. But again, having WoW BoEs, I think, add a lot of flavors to the game. It's always such a nice feeling when you kill a random mob and suddenly you see this nice BoE, epic BoE that you can then sell in the auction house. And also it's just good for the economy overall. So this is something that in my opinion has been lacking in Dragonflight. I really hope we will see the return of world BoEs in the War Within. But as there is now the crafting order system, maybe this is not something that Blizzard wants and they really want to only have people get these really high level items through the crafting order system. So anyway, for this reason, this I would only put it only a 1 or like a 0 out of 10 because there hasn't been any world BoEs. And I really hope in the future we will see more of them added into the game. Another thing I want to talk about, and here I know I'm going to get a lot of hate, and I know a lot of you are going to disagree with me, but it's completely fine, is the fact that a lot of different mounts that you can still get in the game and that are really hard to get are now made easy, or at least are easier to get, because Blizzard is deciding to try and make sure as many people can get them, and that for them it's as easy as possible. So I think the main example are of course all the different world boss mounts from Mr. Pandaria and also from Warriors of Draenor. I know that the main change happened after there has been a bug with the introduction of drag tiers and evokers in the game, and that basically a lot of people abused that and got all these rare mounts super easily at the release of Dragonflight, and that therefore Blizzard decided to increase the drop rate of all these different mounts simply to make sure that people were not too mad at the fact that with this bug a lot of people got these different mounts in not really a nice way. But again, I think it removes the prestige out of these mounts, whether you like it or not. This is true. A lot of people want items in the game simply because they're rare, they're difficult to get, and this is what creates the value of these different items. And again, I really don't see the issue with having some items that are extremely difficult to get, even though it's mainly based on luck and on grinding. I think it's fine. These are mounts, these are not necessary for you in the game. These are really just little things you can get extra. And I think it's important to have things really difficult to work with, as long as again they don't impact your gameplay. So for me, having this type of really difficult mounts to get is not an issue, and it's actually positive for the game because it creates an objective for players. And I know tons of players are gonna say, well, I've been farming these mounts for years before that, killing them on 20 characters every week, and it's BS because then I have some friends, they killed the boss once and they got the mount. Sure, life is unfair in many ways, but then for me, the quick and easy solution is just not to make them as easy as possible to get for everyone, because then it just removes the value of all these different mounts. I think the best examples are of course the TCG mounts, the ones that have been added through the new Twitch drops and everything. They're completely useless and worthless now. And it's because this mount lost all its value, and also in the first place, these are very old models that are not really that nice. And so the only reason why people used to still use these different mounts and used to want these mounts is because they were rare and prestigious. And I know a lot of people are gonna say, well, where is the prestige in buying something with real money? But again, you're talking probably about a fraction of the players who actually got these TCG mounts, myself included. You can also just farm gold. People also just got them through the card game, and there are so many other ways you could get these mounts. But again, this is my opinion on that. Then another really good example comes from Mythic raiding. So it has always been the case where in an expansion, the second raid will offer a Mythic unique mount, and then the last raid or the raid before that will offer also a Mythic unique mount, usually a non-Mythic mount that can drop from any difficulty that is just more rare. And also, usually you have the ahead of the curve achievement mount. And what happened in Dragonflight is the fact that first, for the first raid, we got one of these new mounts, which was Dragonriding customization. But still, this was a new mount that drops from the last boss, and this is something you were able to get from any difficulties. So it means that you were also able to get it, for instance, by doing LFR, which is fine, but then this mount, honestly, in my opinion, just doesn't have any value whatsoever, because it's impossible to really tell how the person got it. And also there were tons and tons of people reusing this mount. So overall, something not really interesting. Then with Aberus, we were able to get a mythic unique mount for the last boss. And there's been a lot of people complaining for whatever reasons. And Blizzard, being Blizzard, decided to then change that. And you were able to also get it from all the other difficulties just by killing the last boss. So for instance, you were still able to get it by doing LFR and getting this really cool new unique mythic normally only mount. So for me, this is a big issue because first of all, it has always been the case. And also I think it's important to add this type of like items that are difficult to get, especially I'm thinking for mythic players, but also in general, it's just great in the game to have things that you need to work hard towards in order to get them. But hopefully, when players try to do the same thing with Amir Drasil, Blizzard decided to stand their ground and they decided that the mythic only mount will remain mythic only, which I think is really the smartest way to proceed. And then, of course, they added this over mount that you can get from any difficulties that is just a little bit more rare. And this is completely fine, in my opinion. So, this is something that I really hope in the future we're not going to see too much of. The fact that, again, a lot of difficult items to get in the game are made super easy simply because people are complaining and they don't want to put the effort and time in getting these type of items, or because it's just based on RNG and luck, which is also sadly part of the game and part of life in general. But again, right now, I'm happy with what Blizzard decided to do with Amir Drasil. And so for this reason, I will put a 3 out of 5 for this specific topic. Now, I want to talk about the reintroduction of some remove from the game items that are now really, really easy to get and too easy. So this is something linked, for instance, to the reintroduction of old content from Naxxramas. As I mentioned, I think this has been done really, really well. And especially, for instance, the tier 3 has been added back into the game in a very, very smart way. But then you have other things that have been added in a little bit too easy way to get. So for instance, here, the main thing I want to talk about are all the different glacial or frost resistant gear from Naxxramas, and these are some really, really amazing sets. So as you can see, for instance, this is the one for plate, and these items were super rare, super nice to see even just in the game. And now you can literally buy the entire set for maybe 20,000 gold on the auction house, which removes completely the entire uniqueness of these sets. One thing I have to say is, of course, I agree that these different sets and these different items should have never been removed from the game in the first place because they were linked to a raid. No one was aware that this raid was going away. And so it's not like, for instance, the challenge mode sets where you knew these items were going to go away after a certain period of time, or the edit sets for PvP. These ones should have never been removed from the game. But as they've been removed from the game for the past 15 years, I think Blizzard could have just made it a little bit more interesting for players to get. So for instance, you can like buy it from the auction house, you can craft it, but maybe just unlock an achievement yourself or do something. Here, it just feels a little bit sad because these type of sets are so nice. And now, as you can see, I've always been dreaming about this set and I haven't even learned it, and I can actually craft it for myself simply because I don't really care anymore. It's just like seeing anyone being able to get it for literally 20k gold on the auction house removes completely, for me at least, the like interest I have in this type of items. And maybe that's my issue. Maybe that's just an issue of wanting something a bit special in the game. And even though I value the beauty of this set, I do value more the rarity and the prestige of some items that I have. Maybe that's on me, but still I think Blizzard needs to make sure that when they reintroduce this type of items, they try at least to make them not as easy as that to get, especially for the most prestigious ones. For instance, if tomorrow they decide to add back the corrupted Ashbringer, I really hope that it won't be just a crafted item that you can then sell in the auction house and buy for 10k gold. I really hope it will be from another way, a more clever thing, and that you can only get it when you really put some efforts in. So this is my opinion on that. I know, again, a lot of you are going to disagree and that's completely fine, but overall, I really want these items to remain like interesting and valuable, and so I think it's fine to add them back into the game, but let's try to add them in a more smart and unique way. And here I don't want to hear anyone telling me that it was difficult to actually get your hands on the different plants and then start crafting these different items. I know, but the thing is like people can then buy them from the auction house without putting any efforts. So you didn't have to interact at all with all the new things from Scholomance, from Naxxramas and everything to get these. If you wanted to actually get, for instance, the tier 3, you needed to do the entire process. But if you wanted to get this set, you can just go on the auction house and buy it for 20,000 gold. So this is why I'm saying for this type of items, it was too easy and they should have planned a better way to reintroduce them. So anyway, for that, I will put a 4 out of 10 because while it's nice to seeing all these different items back, I still think there's ways to make it more interesting. Finally, the last item on my list is something that I'm not an expert in, so it's going to be pretty difficult for me to say whether it's a positive or a negative in Dragonflight, and that's why I'm going to have to rely on all of you to determine in which category it is, and this is PvE. So here, of course, I'm talking about both Raiding and Mythic Plus. I know that there's been a lot of complaints about both Raiding and Mythic Plus, especially Mythic Plus. I know also that Blizzard is trying to find new ways to like try and solve these different issues. But still, I think Mythic Plus in general is a system that needs to be revamped. Also, I think the rewards you get from Mythic Plus are not good enough. For instance, in Dragonflight, being able to get Keystone Master and you get a ground mount in an expansion where everything is about Dragonriding is not really good. Also, I think in general, they should bring back this type of challenge mode sets, challenge mode weapons, and things like that linked to Mythic Plus because it creates just more incentives for people to interact with these different systems. And then when it comes to raiding, from what I understood, people were complaining a little bit about the last raid, especially because it was too difficult. I have to say, I watched the whole Race to World First and I had so much fun, and I think it was probably one of the most successful Race to World First ever in the history of the game. So I do think there's still a lot of positive here, but again, this is not something I'm an expert in. I barely did a few bosses of each raid during the entire expansion, so I'm not going to be really able to say whether this is a positive or a negative. I think for me, PvE is and always be a little bit of a gray area because while there is things that Blizzard can do to improve this, overall there's always gonna have people complaining because it's either too easy, it's either too complicated. And so for me, I think this is something that for now is fine. There hasn't been any major changes that made it so bad. So again, let me know in the comments what you think about PvE and if you think this is something that needs a lot of improvement or if it was okay in Dragonflight. So these are all the different things I really wanted to mention in today's video. Of course, I'm sure I'm missing a lot of things. And also, of course, I didn't talk about some of the newest systems, for instance, the Follower Dungeon and this type of things, because it's a little bit too early to say if it's a success or not. But let me know really in the comments what you think. What are, in your opinion, the biggest wins of Dragonflight and also the biggest L's? So when it comes to answering the question, is it worth it playing World of Warcraft in 2024? I would say then yes. I think Dragonflight is such an improvement compared to Shadowlands, and of course Shadowlands was complete crap, so it's not really difficult to improve. But I think there's a lot of really positive things that have been added into the game, and overall I think Blizzard have a better way to release content and make sure that this is something interesting for players. So while there are still plenty of things that needs to be improved, I think it's on the right path, and now we can just wait and see with the 3 next expansions whether Blizzard is going to decide to continue on this progress or if they're going to try and ruin it again like they did in Shadowlands. So for me, I would say yes, it is good. It's really not the worst expansion. It's not the best one as well. But it's really okay-ish, and for this reason, if you enjoy playing World of Warcraft, most likely you're enjoying playing Dragonflight in some aspects. So I will be back very soon with more guides and more videos, and in the meantime, I wish you all a great Sunday. Bye!